You have a test! Yes, I know that your brain is still on summer vacation, but your body has a test on colonial America in like 10 minutes, and you have no idea what's going to be on it. Luckily, Mr. Betts has got you covered. In the next 10 minutes, we're going to go over 50 things that you need to know for your colonial America test. Let's go! Let's start with Roanoke, the first attempt at an English colony in the New World in 1587. It failed so miserably that nobody knows what happened to the colonists. Cut to Jamestown, the first successful English settlement in 1607 in what would become the Virginia colony. Now you can give a lot of credit to John Smith, the leader of Jamestown, who told colonists, hey, you don't work, you don't eat. There's also the story about how he was saved by Pocahontas, the daughter of Chief Powhatan, leader of the local Native American tribe. Pocahontas later marries a colonist named John Rolfe, who made his fortune growing and selling tobacco, which is a cash crop, a crop that you grow to sell and not to eat. Tobacco is what initially allowed the Virginia colony to become successful and prosper because people in Europe could not get enough of the stuff. As Virginia grew, it created the House of Burgesses, the first representative government in the English colonies. Woohoo! Up north, you had Pilgrims or Separatists. Persecuted in England, they came to the New World in 1620 seeking religious freedom. Now, they were supposed to settle around Manhattan, so in order to make their colony legal and everything, they decided to make the Mayflower Compact, a document which pledged their loyalty to the King of England and to each other. And they stated that they were going to create a civil body politic. Yay! More self-government! Now, it's a good thing that they met Squanto, a local Native American that helped them learn to use the land of the Plymouth colony. To celebrate the harvest in the following year, they even had a Thanksgiving festival. But they wouldn't be alone for long. Enter the Puritans. Also critical of the Church of England, they came to the New World for religious freedom and for opportunity. One of their early governors, John Winthrop, said that they would be a city upon a hill, meaning that they would be an example for the rest of the world. Self-righteous much? This colony would be known as the Massachusetts Bay Colony, especially known for religious freedom for Puritans and not many other people. Now, they did have a general court, another elected assembly that allowed citizens to participate, provided that they were adults and male and belonged to the church and owned property. Still, it couldn't have been that bad, or there wouldn't have been the Great Migration, this massive movement between the 1620s and the 1640s that saw 50,000 Puritans leave Europe for the New World, mainly the English colonies and the Caribbean. Almost 20,000 Puritans themselves went to New England. Oh wait, we haven't done geography yet! Quick, a colonial map. From north to south, you have Massachusetts in two places: New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Now, the New England colonies refers to Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. They were known for their rich forests, their rocky soils, and their really good harbors, which was good for commerce and trade. Roger Williams was a Puritan minister who founded Rhode Island after he was kicked out of Massachusetts for preaching religious tolerance and fair dealing with the Native Americans. I know, weird, right? Anne Hutchinson had the nerve to be a woman preaching to Puritans, and she was banished from Massachusetts as well. Down in Connecticut, you had the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, or the first written constitution in the colonies. Now, things weren't all peachy keen. In New England, as well as everywhere else, growing populations created growing conflict between colonists and Native Americans, as seen in King Philip's War, in which King Philip, aka Metacom, angry over colonial expansion and the treatment of his people, led attacks on colonists, killing hundreds. In turn, the colonists attacked Metacom and his people, as well as innocent Native Americans, and pretty much opened up the whole region to colonial expansion. Now, the middle colonies, consisting of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. Sometimes they're called the breadbasket colonies because they were so good at growing wheat, with their seasonal climate, and they were bustling with diversity. But the whole region wasn't always British. New Amsterdam was a Dutch settlement on the island of Manhattan, part of the larger New Netherland colony. It was filled with large estates called patroons, and New Amsterdam even had a peg-leg governor called Peter Stuyvesant, who was forced to hand over the colony in 1664 to the English when they arrived, and he couldn't get anybody to fight for them. New Jersey! Just kidding, you don't need to know anything about New Jersey, but you do need to know William Penn, an Englishman who was owed money by King Charles II. He said, no man, just give me some land so that I can make a colony. And this colony, Pennsylvania, would be good for people like him, Quakers, another persecuted group from England. These ones were pacifists. They were welcome in Pennsylvania as well as everybody else that wanted to be treated equally. What about Delaware? Well, it was settled by Swedes. Originally it was part of Penn's Pennsylvania, but he allowed them to break off and become their own colony. Cut to the southern colonies, which were Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. There, the climate was warm, the economy agricultural, the motivation financial, and the people Anglican, mostly. Maryland started off as a colony for Catholics, yet another persecuted group in England, but soon Anglicans started pouring in, which prompted the Maryland Toleration Act, which granted religious freedom for everyone, provided that they worship Jesus, nobody else. Now, there was some conflict over where Maryland ended and Pennsylvania began, so the Mason-Dixon line was created. This was made to formally map out the boundary, and today, the Mason-Dixon line is the symbolic border between the North and the South. Now, I've already talked about Virginia, but I do have to mention Bacon's Rebellion, in which a planter, Nathaniel Bacon, led an uprising against Indians in the West, whose land they wanted, and against the government in the East, who they felt weren't protecting them. North Carolina was originally part of a single unified Carolina. They divided in 1729. South Carolina was particularly good for agriculture, what with all its fertile farmland, and had a really good harbor that would become Charleston, the single most important shipping city in all of the colonial South. Indigo, a crop developed by Eliza Lucas Pinckney, was able to create a beautiful blue dye, grew particularly well in the Carolinas, and became in high demand. James Oglethorpe started a different kind of colony in Georgia. Now, back in England, if you were in debt, you could go to prison. So Oglethorpe wanted to create a colony in which debtors and other poor people could come for a fresh start. England liked the idea because that would create a buffer between the Spanish down south and the rest of the colonies that they actually liked up north. Indentured servants also came to the colonies looking for opportunities. Now, getting here was very expensive, so they would contract themselves out for a set amount of years in exchange for transit, room and board, and hopefully a good piece of land when they were done working and their contract expired. African slaves, on the other hand, did not come over voluntarily. First arriving in Jamestown in 1619, they were kidnapped, brought over, sold, and forced to work on new plantations in the 13 colonies and down in the Caribbean. Now, this was all part of the Triangle Trade, which saw raw materials coming from the colonies going to Europe. There, they would be turned into manufactured goods that would be sent back to the colonies or down to Africa, in which they would be exchanged for gold, spices, and slaves. Olaudah Equiano, an African who had once been kidnapped and enslaved, wrote about the horrible Middle Passage, or transit from Africa to the New World, in his narrative. Still, this all fell in line with the theory of mercantilism, which said that a nation's power rests in its wealth, and you gotta do what you gotta do to make that wealth. To protect their wealth, England even passed the Navigation Acts, a series of laws in the mid-1600s that said that colonists can only use English ships and can only sell their raw materials to England and no other countries.
Mr. Betts, I hate to be rude here, but you've said that word colony about 1,000,000 times in this video, and you have yet to define what it actually means or the different types of them.
Oh.
Well, tag me in. A colony is an area controlled by another country, and it's usually settled by people from that other country. There were 3 types of English colonies. Charter colonies saw settlers receiving grants or charters, and the people there could elect their own officials. These were your Connecticuts or your Rhode Islands. Proprietary colonies. The people that were granted the land had the power. They usually appointed their officials, but sometimes they elected them. We're talking like your Delawares or your Marylands here. Royal colonies. The king was still in control, which means he appointed officials and governors, and even if a colony had its own officials, Great Britain was still in charge. This would totally not lead to any conflict down the road. So this was your New Yorks, your Virginias, and your Massachusetts.
Thanks, Mr. Beat. We have time for just a couple more before the test starts. Let's do the Salem witch trials in Salem, Massachusetts, 1692 to 93. Just a little witch hunt that saw 20 people executed and 1 dog, and exposed the Puritan lifestyle as maybe too strict and intolerant and self-righteous. The Great Awakening, a series of religious revivals in the 1720s and 40s that called on people to rededicate themselves to Christianity, look away from Enlightenment ideals like logic and reason, and apparently constantly think about HE double hockey sticks if Jonathan Edwards is to be believed. Ironically, this actually led to more religious diversity. You should know Peter Zenger, a newspaper publisher that was critical of the New York royal governor. He was arrested for getting all savage in the papers, but was found not guilty on account of all of it being true. Yes, early freedom of the press! And don't forget the Iroquois Confederacy, a New York-based group of Native Americans, first 5 tribes, later 6. They remained independent of England and France and showed what happens when diverse group of people work together for a common good. Foreshadowing? That's all the time we have. But I think you're good to go. If you think you're gonna kill this test, give this video a like and let me know how you did in the comments. Make sure you subscribe because it's a long school year and we're gonna get through this together. Also, subscribe to Mr. Beat. Thanks for helping us out. Be safe. I'll see you next time.